It's time for Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group with certified financial planners Kevin Korhorn, Mike Bernard, and Josh Gregory.
Welcome to another episode of the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group, where every week we're helping you take your next wise step in your financial life. Thanks for being here, friends. My name is Mike Bernard. I am your host. I'm also one of the certified financial planners on the program. And with me in the KFG studio is my business partner and fellow CFPs, Kevin Korhorn.
Yeah, on a scale of 1 through 10, how confident are you that you're funding the right accounts for retirement? The confusion and decision around pre-tax versus Roth is one of the quintessential financial planning choices, and we're going to help you with that today, answering your frequently asked questions about how you decide between traditional and Roth. We're covering that and more on this episode of The Wise Money Show.
Is that a tax decision? Is it an investment decision? Is it a retirement decision? Is it a cash flow decision? The truth is, it's all of those. And so are all of those areas informing the decision-making process so that you make a great choice and not just a good one. It's all part of your tax shelter strategy. By the way, if you have a better name for a tax shelter strategy, we'd love to hear it. Go to the Wise Money YouTube channel and share your comments. We'd love to hear have a better handle for that. But this is all part of your tax shelter strategy. We're helping with that right now. If you have a question for the program, we'd love to hear from you. You can call or text us 574-222-2000. That's 574-222-2000. Online, wisemoneyshow.com is where you can find us. Engage with us that way. And like I said, all over social media, YouTube, and so on. Just search the Wise Money Show, and you'll find us there. We miss you, Josh. Josh is unable to be with us. Boy, I think we're on a stretch of a couple of years where it's been the three of us.
Yes.
And it used to not always be that way, but Josh is out today. And
It's
to all of Josh's fans, he'll be back.
It's better, the three of us.
Yeah.
We have been together, the three of us, for 22 years, and we really are complementary and kind of complete each other.
Yeah.
I certainly don't feel safe with any of my thoughts without running them past my business partners, fellow CFPs, and friends.
Yeah, there you go. And friends.
Yes.
All right. So let's jump right in. Does it even matter? So, Kevin, you posed a question.
Mm-hmm.
One of the quintessential financial planning decisions is, should you contribute pre-tax for retirement, get that deduction today, even though you're going to have to pay tax when you withdraw the money? Or do you skip the deduction today, contribute to the Roth, and then no tax will ever be on those dollars, assuming you play by the rules? Does it matter? We're going to hit frequently asked questions. I'm going to start with, who cares? Should you care?
You should. You should definitely care, because when you look at this, and we've been doing a lot of work on this idea of what is my strategy and what is my execution. And we spent some time working on the idea of growth and how do you grow an organization. You're looking at your financial life and you're saying, how do I accumulate assets so that I can beat the impacts of taxes and inflation and have an income replacement strategy at some point in the future? And so the question is, do I want to pay tax today and have that money grow tax-free forever, which would be the Roth, or am I willing to not pay tax today and pay tax at some point in the future on that amount plus the growth? Yeah. And so we would call that the IRA. Maybe to make it easier, you would say traditional or pre-tax IRA. We've simplified and just, hey, this is an IRA. The Roth IRA, everyone, we would say, okay, that's easy. That handle is, I take after-tax money, I put it in, it grows tax deferred, and it comes out tax-free. So if this is a show about financial planning, what does my decision to be in a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA have to do with financial planning? And Mike, you just rattled off almost all 6 areas of financial planning, and this decision does matter. So this is because when you think, what am I trying to do with my tax situation? My favorite word related to taxes, and you say, well, do I need tax planning or do I need tax preparation? Well, for sure you need tax preparation because that's compliance, right? You got to be compliant every year and file a tax return and make sure your taxes are paid. But what is the tax planning if I'm looking at my financial plan, and how do I optimize?
Yeah, I'm glad you parked there, because if you're a nerd like us, you might have done some of the math to say, wait a second, If I'm in the same tax bracket the year that I'm funding this traditional IRA or Roth, and I'm in the exact same tax bracket when I take it out, the math is actually the same.
Mm-hmm.
And that is true.
Mm-hmm.
If you are say you're in the 22% tax bracket today and certain state and local taxes, and you contribute pre-tax, and then you have the dollars grow, and when you withdraw them in retirement, you're in the exact same situation, 22% tax bracket, same state and local taxes. The math is going to be the same between Roth and pre-tax. The reason, so you could argue this doesn't matter, but from when you actually look at your taxes, there are so many moving pieces. It is hard to, it would be very difficult to say, yeah, things are going to be exactly the same. What are some possible things that could change? Think about how many tax law changes we've had even just over the past 6 years. So tax laws could change. New taxes could be introduced. That's part of those tax law changes. Some of the deductions that you're currently getting today, they could have a phase out to them, and you might not be eligible for them out there in the future. What about spouse passing away? And right now, this tax bracket is obviously connected to your marital status, filing status. Well, what if you're in a different filing status? What if you are already a widow or widower? I'll never get married again. And then in retirement, you do get married because you're lonely and you found you find a life partner, right? Or what if it's not the death of a spouse? What if it's passing away of a parent? And all of a sudden, you're receiving those inheritance dollars, and that messes with your tax picture. So while the math, and there's a lot of folks on YouTube and others that will say, nah, just look at it, everything's the same. It's up to you. Because going back to what Kevin said, yeah, these are choices. It's just, how do you make a great choice? Funding your retirement accounts and using a tax shelter, that's a good choice. How do you make a great choice? A great choice is figuring out which one is right for you at each moment. And I'm not saying it changes every day, but it certainly isn't I make this choice once and then I stick with it.
Right. And so in the one that you didn't hit, and I'm looking at my list and checking them off. Yeah, I mean, the one that you didn't hit is, what if I live in a state with state taxes, and in retirement, I move to Florida or to Texas or to South Dakota or some of these states that have no state income tax? Or
what if your state tax situation changes, meaning you stay in the same state, but they change the laws.
Right. So this is the challenging thing about financial planning. And this is where, as we've worked with lots of folks on our team, if you are wired so that you have to have the right answer, you're probably not going to be a good financial planner because it's too hard. And the right answer doesn't really exist. So what you have to do is say, well, what is my vector? What direction am I? But I mean, like you said, Mike, I think of there's 84 to 124 trillion dollars that's going to pass from the great generation and the boomers down to the next generation. So what if I had this perfect strategy and then all of a sudden I got money from my parents that I wasn't expecting. I got money from my uncle and aunt who never had kids that I wasn't expecting. And all of a sudden, that materially changes my tax picture.
So it matters, guys. It does. Now, grassroots, before we get into the real, quick FAQs, Kevin started sharing some of the differences, how the rules work. Traditional IRA, as you make a contribution in that year, it's a deduction. Where is that deduction? Happens on the front page of your tax return, reduces your adjusted gross income and your modified adjusted gross income. So you get a deduction today. Those dollars are then growing tax sheltered in that traditional IRA, meaning the interest, the dividends, the capital gains don't land on your tax return every year. And then when you withdraw the dollars after age 59 and a half or even before, that's when they're taxable. And then what does the age 59 and a half deal with? Well, are you going to pay an early withdrawal penalty or not? Assuming that you hold the dollars until after age 59 and a half, then you avoid the 10% early withdrawal penalty, but it's taxable at that time. That's the traditional. The only other thing to mention as far as the rules is there is a required minimum distribution. If you say, oh, no, I know my game, I'm going to contribute, get the deduction, and I'm never going to take anything out. Well, at some point you're going to have to. At age 73, soon to be 75, they're going to force you to take some out. There's a calculation that's done every year, and the amount changes every single year. And if you say, well, fine, but that'll just be on my life. No. Then we'll talk about this, one of the FAQs. It's going to be inherited, and they'll have to withdraw it. The Roth IRA, after tax contribution, and you don't get a deduction. Still tax sheltered, but then as long as you've held the Roth IRA for 5 years and you're age 59 and a half, all that growth comes out tax-free, and there's no required minimum distribution on the Roth. Those are the rules, level set. Now we're going to build on top of that, answering your frequently asked questions with traditional IRA and Roth. We got that more coming up here on The Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Hello, YouTube. Thanks for being here. This is The Wise Money Show. What you're watching right now is our weekly 1-hour talk show that airs right here on this channel, 10 a.m. Eastern time every Saturday morning. Also on podcasts at the same time, and also on a couple local radio stations at the same time as well, which is why the content's structured the way that it is. Number one, it is long form. So if you're not into that, hopefully we give you some good punchy stuff before you go. But also we've got segment breaks and so on, 4 segments and whatnot for commercial breaks for the radio. But if you say, this is long form, I'm not really into that, I want to go faster, listen at 1.5 times speed. But we've also got next wise step videos and shorts and a lot of other content right here on this channel that goes at your pace, but all from a comprehensive financial planning perspective. So how do you make great choices, pre-tax or Roth, not just based on your emotions or based on what you like, your preferences, but based on your financial plan, looking at all 6 areas of your financial life and how they're integrated. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you're made aware every time we drop new content. If you like the content, thank you very much. Kevin, bonus question.
Yes.
Your first IRA or Roth IRA contribution was what year?
Was 1994.
And the contribution limit was?
2000.
Okay.
And I did it pre-tax. I was doing my tax return in TurboTax.
There's no way.
Dude, if it wasn't...
I mean, there could have been some software, but there was no turboing in 94.
I don't know. I know
Bill Gates hadn't invented the internet yet.
No, well, that is a great question because I remember. Well, I remember this for sure. Looking at TurboTax and saying I do this pre-tax or not. So that would have been, the Roth IRA wasn't even around in 1994, so it wasn't a choice. Yeah. And I'm assuming now that you're forcing me to dust off these cobwebs. It was I did my returns using pencil and paper.
Yeah.
For the first few years of our marriage, and it wasn't very complicated. And then I switched as soon as TurboTax came out, and then every year I would do my own taxes on TurboTax, and every year I would get a notice because I was doing things that I couldn't do. The software allowed me to do and file a tax return, but it wasn't. Yeah. So that's what I'm like.
My first contribution was 2005. And it was because in 2003 and 4, when I started my career, technically my folks were still able to claim me as a dependent. And maybe I contributed in 2004, but I don't even remember what the contribution limit was. Probably $3,000. It wasn't much higher. So, and believe it or not, those are the dollars out of all of the dollars in my portfolio or Kevin's portfolio that have grown the most because they started the earliest. Mm-hmm. And so the question to you or the challenge to you right now is what's holding you back from contributing right now? Because in, 22 years? In 22 years, your contributions that you make right now are going to be some of the hardest working dollars for you in your portfolio. So what's holding you back? All right, let's get back into it.
In 1993, Intuit acquired ChipSoft for $225 million, and TurboTax was already the most popular tax preparation software option. So but I do think, and again, it doesn't
matter. Turbo is a relative word. So turbo is how fast can you write that thing with pencil?
Right. Well, I think it was all filed by hand for probably the first few years, but then, I mean, you couldn't go in the office supply store because it used to be. This isn't going to make any sense to the younger generation, but you used to have to go to the store to get supplies, and so you'd go into the store and you'd see the 5 and something floppy, 5 1/4 floppy disk, and you'd put that in your
Yeah. Simpler times.
The good old days.
All right. Here we go. Actually, not simpler times. Now you can just pull it up and you don't have to get a floppy disk and all that. So, all right, here we go. Okay, income limits. And then, we get popcorn.
Yeah, I mean, so I do think we do need to make a point that anyone, and I used to say including Bill Gates, but we should pick a different rich guy now.
I don't know if he's got earned income. So income limits, that feeds right into that.
Right, but this is the thing. If I make a bunch of money, I'm like, well, I can't contribute to that.
Yeah, we're going to hit it right now.
Okay.
One of the challenges or hurdles when you're contributing between a traditional IRA, Roth IRA, is you got to know the income limits. What type of income? How much can you have? That's sometimes you might want to, or maybe even believe from your tax shelter strategy, I should be funding a Roth. I need to fund a Roth, but you actually aren't allowed to. What are those rules? We're hitting that right now. This is Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being here. My name is Mike Bernard. With me in the KFG studio today, Kevin Korhorn, no Josh Gregory. Every episode of the Wise Money Show is on on podcast wherever you listen. Just search the Wise Money Show. Subscribe to it there. Rate the program there as well. We appreciate it. We're hitting FAQs, frequently asked questions, deciding between the traditional IRA and the Roth IRA. And yes, likely, if you've got an employer-sponsored plan, you also would have available a pre-tax 401k or Roth 401k or pre-tax simple, or there is a thing with the Roth simple IRA. I don't see anyone using it just yet, but we're focusing on traditional IRA versus Roth IRA. How do you make a great choice? Well, you might want to do the Roth. I love the Roth. It's not one size fits all. You guys know I tip that jump ball to the Roth side as frequently as I can. And yet you might not be able to. What are the income limits? On the front end, Kevin, I don't know if you have those squared away, but on the front end, you do have to have earned income. Let's not forget that. Oftentimes people think, well, I'm working, but I'm maybe making too much money. Can I fund it? You probably can. We'll talk about income limits. But then I'm early in retirement. I no longer have earned income, but I've got Social Security. I got a pension. Can't I fund these things? No, you can't. You've got to have earned income. So what are the income limits?
So my Social Security doesn't count. My pension doesn't count. My rental income. I got a rental house that I'm renting, and I've had that for the last 15 years. That does not count. It's earned income, or I would say active income. And so if you said, well, what are the limits to make me eligible to contribute? If you're trying to contribute to a Roth IRA, it's $153,000 for a single filer, and for married, it's $242,000.
So those are the income limits on your modified adjusted gross income. So you add up all of your income, not just your earned income, but you'd add up all of that income. If you're below, for a single filer, below that 153, you're fine. If you're a little bit over it, you're not able to do as much. It starts getting phased out, and if you're over 168, then you can't do any. That's single. That's for the Roth. The married jointly, 242, and you'd think, well, then it's also going to have a $15,000 runway. No, it doesn't. That phase out is only $10,000 because people don't know what they're doing when they're setting these rules. That makes no sense.
Right. And the other thing that makes no sense is, well, okay, if I wanted to do a traditional IRA, if my tax plan said traditional and let's say traditional deductible, well, those are different numbers as well. So I could get a deduction if I'm single and I make $81,000 or less. That way I can put the max in and it comes right off the front page of my return. And married, it's $129,000 or less.
That's for getting that deduction, pre-tax, traditional IRA, if you are an active participant in a 401k. If you're not an active participant in a 401k, that's why I don't know if you've ever looked at that checkbox on your W-2. Probably not. You're not nerds like us, but that's what that checkbox is for the most part. Mm-hmm. But if you're not an active participant in a 401k, then you can get a deduction regardless of your income.
Well, yeah. Right, unless there's a different retirement plan. It doesn't necessarily have to be for.
Correct.
But, right.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, thank you.
So if you are participating in a retirement plan or your employer is participating on your behalf, then you're subject to a different set of rules. But the thing the most important thing that if you said, Do I need to memorize these numbers? No, you don't.
Yep.
Here's what you need to know. No matter who you are, you can contribute to an IRA. So it's
if you have earned income.
If you have earned income.
Yep.
And does it have to be your earned income?
Could
No.
be spouses.
It's household income.
Yeah.
So if I didn't work, but my spouse worked and made $20,000 of earned income, I could contribute the max. She could contribute the max.
But where you're going is as long as you have that earned income, you can contribute. The question is, are you going to deduct it or not? And that leads to the next frequently asked question. I hear all this stuff about a backdoor Roth IRA strategy. What is that? When does it make sense? So, Kevin, what do you got?
Well, yeah, a backdoor Roth IRA strategy makes the most sense if I don't have traditional IRA dollars that I've never paid taxes on. Because if I don't have traditional IRA dollars that I've never paid taxes on, I can make a contribution to a traditional IRA, and I would do an after-tax contribution, and then immediately convert that to a Roth IRA. There are two ways to get money into a Roth IRA. One is to contribute, but Mike's talking about the thresholds that prevent me from contributing. The other way is to convert. So I can take traditional IRA money, whether it's pre-tax or after-tax, and convert it to the Roth IRA. Now, if it's pre-tax money, when it goes into the Roth IRA, that's when I pay taxes on it.
Yep.
If it's after-tax money, there's no tax due.
On that conversion. So this is where your income's above these contribution limits for the Roth. So what do we say?
252.
242 and then 252 for married filing jointly. So if your income's below that and you've got earned income, backdoor Roth might sound fancy. You might want to impress your friends and say, I'm doing backdoor Roth. You just don't need to because you're below the limit. You can. There's no backdoor. Go in the front door. And you're just fine. But if your income's over that because your income is over that, or you've had an event, meaning you sold a property or you inherited some dollars or got a big bonus this year, something like that, and all of a sudden your income's over that. And this catches people by surprise. They just have their Roth IRA contributions on autopilot, and then all of a sudden something happens. They're not thinking, I'm now not able to contribute to a Roth. If you do and your income's over those limits, big penalties and excise penalties for every year you go without fixing it. So in that instance, your income's above the thresholds to do a Roth, and you want to get some dollars in there anyway. If you've got earned income, you can contribute to a traditional IRA, just not deduct it, and then convert it over to the Roth. But I'm going to end where Kevin started, and that is if you do that and you already have a bunch of pre-tax money in an IRA, you're not able to just take the after-tax money out of it. That would make way too much sense. That'd be way too easy. They don't let you do that. Even if you say, again, we're hitting frequently asked questions. You might know a lot of these things. Even if you say, no, I know what I'll do. I'll outsmart the system. My pre-tax IRA is at one company, one investment company. I'll open up an IRA at a different company, and I'll contribute my after-tax money there. So say Fidelity and American Funds. All of my pre-tax IRAs at Fidelity, I'll open up an American Funds or a Robinhood account, and that's where I'll do my after-tax. Now, this is one of the rules, one of the times, there's 4 of them, where the IRS looks at all IRAs as the same. They call that the IRA aggregation rule. And so it doesn't matter if it's at different companies, they aggregate all of it. So one of the reasons you wouldn't do a backdoor Roth, or you'd want to be very, very careful because it's not going to work the way that you think it should, is if you have a lot of pre-tax money in an IRA. Kevin, you talked about Roth conversion, right? The backdoor Roth is part contribution, part conversion. What about Roth conversion? Does that make sense? When should you consider doing a Roth conversion period? Not connected to backdoor. Again, we're popcorning through lots of questions. When do you consider doing a Roth conversion?
Well, this is where tax planning is a big deal, because if there is a year that I have an artificially low income, and I've talked to these folks and I've said, hey, listen, we can make your income higher. And they're like, well, how am I going to make my income higher? Yeah. Because I'm not working, or I'm taking 6 months off. I'm doing something. Well, one of the ways that you can do it, that you can accomplish that, is you can convert traditional pre-tax IRA dollars to Roth IRA dollars. So when I have an artificially low income year, if I'm in transition or there's something going on in my situation.
Yeah, let's just name a couple of those. I mean, one, you have income displacement. There are, even though the unemployment rate's very low, I'm hearing more and more people who are suddenly, out of a job and they're looking for their next gig. So that happens to you, thinking opportunistically. If you're starting a family and now you're going to go down to one income for a season, even if that's just 3 months or maybe for the rest of the year, that's a reason. Maybe you typically get a bonus or your pay is structured where some of it is predictable, some of it's variable, and the variable stuff is just varying, right? That's a season. Often these deal with other life circumstances, and if your brain's not tuned to being opportunistic, like you said, Kevin, you might miss an opportunity to push some dollars into your Roth at a lower tax rate. All right, we've got more on that coming up here on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Kevin, when's the last time you told, when someone wanted to do a Roth conversion, you said, no, don't do it. Now is not the time?
I can't think of a time that I said that. I am not Ed Slott. And I mean, Ed Slott is the
IRA expert,
he's the ultimate Roth IRA hammer.
It's always a good time.
Everything looks like a nail to him.
I had one where there was an individual later in his working years, and so he's feeling the pinch of, I need more tax diversification. They've saved up aggressively, and everything, for the most part, was in pre-tax, close to $1.8 million. It was in pre-tax, really nothing in Roth. So he's feeling this tension. I need more tax diversification. The issue is just a couple years away from his plan was to go part-time and then retire. And it's like, you're in the 24% tax bracket today. And even though, or I would argue, 24%, yeah, that's green. Do Roth conversion for many people. It was just a couple years later, he'd be in the 22% bracket and then potentially in the 12% tax bracket based on their lifestyle. And so that was the last time where I was like, no, I would wait.
Yeah. So it's not as much about when have I said to someone, hey, you should not convert from IRA to Roth IRA. It's more about where should you be contributing, and this is more related to a retirement plan, where there are some people that are putting money in pre-tax, and you say you should definitely put that in the Roth side of the 401k. And I've met folks, and this is not uncommon, to meet folks with money in that they're contributing to the Roth side of the 401k, where you say, no, it should be pre-tax. And so the question is, why? And it shouldn't be, well, hey, this is just my opinion, and I like this one, and I don't like this one. For us at KFG, these are tools.
Yeah.
And so our question is, what are the right tools?
Yeah. And that's the purpose of the show. So, all right, third segment. Let's get into it. We'll pick it back up with Roth conversion, especially in retirement. We've got lots of room here. So here we go. What's your tax shelter strategy? Again, that might not roll right off the tip of my tongue, but what's your approach to funding your retirement accounts? And when's the last time you took a planful? I hesitated there because that's one of Kevin's least favorite words. When's the last time you were intentional about that approach? Looking at all 6 areas of your financial life, even your estate plan and cash flow and your investment strategy, and said, yeah, the right one for me is pre-tax, traditional IRA, or the right one for me is Roth, or maybe to do a Roth conversion. We're helping with that right now. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being here. My name is Mike Bernard. With me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn. Stay up to date on all Wise Money content. Find us online, wisemoneyshow.com, and then all over social media, wherever you're at, we are there as well. Search the Wise Money Show. Engage with us that way. Send questions and so on. Okay, so we were just talking about Roth conversion. One of the other frequently asked questions or misunderstood. Oh, you got some?
Yeah, well, I kind of want to finish that list because the question is, when is a good time? And I've got my list, so I would say a great time is when I have to do a required minimum distribution, but I don't need the money. So I will take that RMD money and
withhold it for taxes.
Yeah. And then above that, if I've got extra money there, I'm going to convert.
Guys, You might not be in that situation. Maybe your folks are, and they're not doing this. You have no idea the amount of tax savings, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars of tax savings that alone can do over decades. And you might say, well, anything gets bigger, over decades. No. We're talking about RMD age that starts at 73. So we're talking later end of retirement. The amount of tax deferral for the remaining, 20 years of that individual's life plus another 10, that is tens of thousands of dollars of tax savings in that strategy alone. So you've got the IRA, and you're not living off of those dollars, but you've reached the point where the IRS says, listen, time to pay up. You've avoided tax on these dollars for too long. We're going to force you to start taking them out. And you say, well, what do I do with this money? Well, are you in the 22% tax bracket? Yeah, well, I've got another $50,000 of room in the 22% tax bracket, or maybe $25,000 up to the limit where I would have to give up some of my new senior deduction. Or maybe you say, nah, I'm willing to go through that. I'm going to go up to IRMA, something like that. And taking your RMD and withholding it all to taxes, or most of it to taxes, and then do a big Roth conversion. Very, very effective strategy for avoiding taxes. I'm going to say over the long term.
And if you said, where is the sweet spot? I think the sweet spot is after I'm retired and before I'm either drawing Social Security or on Medicare. So you get some of those the tax issues out of the way, and you do that. During the lower income years. Another time to consider it is when there's a meaningful market drop.
Now, let's talk to that, because done some videos on this, and we've had some great followers and fans in this community who have said, yeah, but I've been looking at the math of it, and even if the stock market is low, the math suggests that it doesn't really matter. Like the upswing in an IRA and then paying the tax would be the same as the upswing in the Roth IRA. But here is the caveat. That assumes when you do the Roth conversion, you are withholding taxes on it. So now I've got more money in my IRA. What's that going to do over, when the market rebounds, and then I have to withdraw it and I have to pay tax then, so it gets a haircut, versus I do a Roth conversion. I take a haircut on that now. Now I have less money deposited in my Roth IRA, and now I have less money growing at that same rebound. It's going to equal the same. The point, while that math is true, I would go back to, we don't know the tax rules or how your circumstances would change in the future. So still advantage Roth conversion. But second, the default shouldn't be withholding taxes on your Roth conversion. I mean, we just talked about if you're in a phase where you're doing RMD, use your RMD to withhold taxes. And then it's just dollars are in the IRA or they're in the Roth when they get that rebound. If you've got some refunds or some other cash, use those dollars to withhold the taxes so that you've got more money that ends up landing in your Roth during the conversion. And when we do hit that inevitable rebound, you've got more dollars growing tax-free.
Yeah, these are fairly simple concepts, but they get a little bit complex in the execution of the concept. So this is where, again, you want to be working with your certified financial planner who should be your tax planner and saying, hey, the market has dropped. And maybe what if the market didn't drop? What if I just have an IRA full of SaaS companies? All right, so I'm down 50%.
Yeah, right.
I'm down 50%. So now should I consider that? But I like your idea, Mike, to say, hey, and if I did convert, should there be a provision to pay the taxes outside of that conversion?
Yeah, and I'm going to go one more is Roth conversion when you're young and early in your career. And you might say, well, wait a second. But I don't have any other resources to withhold on those dollars, so I have to withhold on the Roth conversion. Be very careful. If you're not 59 and a half and you withhold on a Roth conversion, that means money came out of your IRA. It didn't land in your Roth. Therefore, that's treated as a withdrawal. That's treated as an early withdrawal penalty. You're going to pay a penalty on that withholding. But that doesn't mean when you're young, you shouldn't do a Roth conversion. I'm thinking back very early in my career when a very young professional couple did a Roth conversion. They did it wrong, by the way. They didn't realize it was taxable, and they didn't even report it on their tax return. And so we were able to give them that bad news before the IRS gave them that bad news, and we helped them fix it. But what they did right, without knowing it, they did two things right. One, they didn't withhold taxes on it, because that would have been created a penalty. But two, they did this when they were expecting their first child, and so they thought, well, let's get this money growing in a Roth IRA. They were in their mid to late 20s. That was 20 years ago. That was an incredible move. That's when you're young, having more money in that Roth is going to have more compound growth in a tax-free account.
And it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like that if you look and you say, wait a minute, are you telling me if I move the money from this account to that account, I have to write a check to the IRS?
Feels painful.
It feels like
like you're doing something wrong.
It feels like you're losing.
Yeah.
But I would say the last one, I want to get this one in here.
Yeah.
If I'm moving, if my job takes me from one place to another, so pretend I'm moving, just make it most extreme, from Texas to California. Texas has a 0 state income tax, and California has a 13.3%
progressive tax. Yeah, meaning
state income
rate.
tax,
Yeah.
right? The top rate. So, that's folks over $1 million. But here's the thing. What should I do? Well, if I'm during the tax year, if it's all constrained to Texas, maybe you should consider converting.
Yeah.
And this is where we talk to folks from Michigan and Indiana, and they say, hey, I spend 4 or 5 months down in Florida, and you say, well,
make it 6.
Yeah,
we'll do some conversions.
Make it 6, and we'll do some conversions, or even just, this is the benefit to that extra month or two as a resident of that state.
Yeah. We've already addressed it, but just to state the question that we get a lot, and maybe you've thought about, is should you consider Roth conversions in retirement? Should you consider Roth conversions after RMD? And that answer is yes. Not in a vacuum, right? You still have to look at not only your tax picture, you've got to look at your retirement plan, you've got to look at your cash flow, you've got to look at your protection plan, right? Is that going to cause IRMA because you're likely on Medicare, and your Medicare, the rate that you pay is going to be based on your income from the prior year. You've got to look at your estate plan, right? That at that stage of life, you're probably more in tune with, all right, does my retirement plan say that I have plenty of money that I'm going to outlive and I need to be strategic with my estate plan and who pays taxes on this? Or is it going to be closer? But that a lot of times people think it's too late for that. The opportunity for tax diversification, that ship has sailed. Not true. Okay, that's number one. Number two, oftentimes people think, well, because I'm required to take money out, I shouldn't do a Roth conversion. No, that's not true either. We didn't hit this point when we were addressing it, and that is you just have to take your RMD out first. Most people are aware that you cannot do a Roth conversion with your required minimum distribution. Unfortunately, that's true. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't do Roth conversions when you've got RMD. You just have to take your RMD first. How would they know? That's a good question, and I don't have the answer to that. I don't think they would, personally, if you've got multiple IRAs.
I know, but here's the thing.
You don't want to play chicken there.
And AI,
it's not worth it.
AI is going to, after the fact, 7 years from now, look back at all these returns.
So do the RMD first. That's where you do that tax projection, figure out what is, I'm going to do the Roth conversion, therefore how much tax will I owe? So how much tax should I withhold from my RMD? I'll take that out first and do your Roth conversion on top of that. We've got a lot more frequently asked questions for the IRA and the Roth. That and more coming up here on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group.
Okay, we're going into segment 4.
Land the plane.
So there is some really good stuff because what we didn't hit is, and I would love to even talk about this scenario where you wake up as a couple in your late 70s, you were in the go-go years, and now you're in somewhere between slow-go and no-go, and you say, we're not spending a lot of money, and we've got $5 million in our IRA. And your child or children are all single. Now you're looking at who should pay the tax on this money.
Yeah.
Because the reality is mom and dad aren't going to spend all of this money in their lifetime.
Yep.
And if that's the case, pretend I only had one child and this child was single, what does that look like? $5 million to this child is $500,000 of taxable income to that person
Every year, right?
Per year.
And not like clockwork, but just do the math.
for 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And oftentimes there is correlation there between how much money you have saved up by the time you're 70 and how many kids you had. So I think that scenario of only one child is probably more accurate. All right. Well, actually that connects to one of the frequently asked questions. So we might bounce around, but yeah, let's hit that.
Okay, let's hit it.
Here we go. Thanks for being here, friends. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. My name is Mike Bernard. With me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn. Every episode of the Wise Money Show, as well as a lot of other content, is on the Wise Money YouTube channel. Go check it out. Go to YouTube, search the Wise Money Show, subscribe to it there, and turn on notifications so you're made aware every time we drop new content. It's not just this talk show that airs right there. We've got shorts and next wise step, 8 to 10 minutes long, all to help you take your next wise step in your financial life from a comprehensive or one plan approach, looking at all 6 areas of your financial life so that you're making great decisions, bringing synergy to your financial life, not treating everything in a vacuum where something looks good over here, but it's actually a competing priority and moving you further away from where you want to go in another area. So go to YouTube, search the Wise Money Show, subscribe to it there, turn on notifications. You can leave questions and comments there as well. We appreciate it. Frequently asked questions with the IRA, traditional IRA, versus the Roth IRA. We've pegged them against each other, and well, how do you make a great decision? There is not a winner in this fight. This is oh gosh, I'm thinking of one of the great boxing matches going way back. There isn't going to be it's going 12 rounds, 13 rounds, but there's no declared winner. It depends on your situation, and your situation could change next year. What makes sense right now might be different next year. Is there a health change? Is there an income change? Did your goals change? Did taxes change? Did the tax laws stay the same, but now you are in a different spot? So you need to be nimble and planning with your CFP. All right, we've got a few more frequently asked questions, and Kevin, this touches on one that we were talking about at the break. When I pass away, do the rules differ when leaving a traditional IRA versus a Roth IRA? It connects to the scenario we were talking about at the break where you're saying, what if you are in your couple and you're in your mid 70s, maybe you're past the go-go years where you're very active and doing lots of things and traveling and things are starting to slow down. Maybe you're in the slow-go, not yet no-go years, but slow-go years, and you still have a large amount in your IRA, $5 million.
Yeah.
Right? But you've only got maybe one child and you're looking and saying, there's no way we're going to spend all this $5 million. I don't know if this child's ever going to get married. They're going to be in single tax rates. What do we do?
Right. Because my child might never get remarried or married, and they might be in single tax rates. But what do we do if one of us is gone?
Right.
And it's hard because the folks that have $5 million in their traditional IRA, never paid taxes on it, they are accumulators. So what do they get joy from? Accumulating. They really don't get a ton of joy from using and spending this money.
Right.
So and you say, well, wait a minute. So I've kind of been institutionalized that like my whole life I've been able to act like this, and now you're suggesting a change in my behavior. Man, is that tough.
Yeah.
It is really tough. So this is where you have to be very objective and say, well, listen, and I'm working through this right now. Hey, it makes sense for you to blow through a couple of these lower tax brackets and to pay IRMA.
Yeah.
Because the tax that you'll pay on this amount of dollars is X, and the tax that your child will pay is Y.
Because so good question. Why? If your child inherits that IRA, it's not that they were your spouse. If they're your spouse, they can just turn it into their own, same rules apply. But if your child inherits it, it now falls under the 10-year rule. And there are some exceptions, eligible designated beneficiaries that get special treatment, but a child is not one of them. They are a designated beneficiary, and therefore they've got to withdraw the dollars within 10 years. No exception. No, well, if I play my cards right, could I get some? No. That's it. You got 10 years. The account needs to be emptied within by 12/31 of 10 years after they inherited it or after you passed away. They would have to take a required minimum distribution every year. but they still need to get that $5 million out, and hopefully that $5 million is growing. So you could look at it as, well, they got to show income of $500,000 a year. Well, what tax bracket would that put them in? And does that help define what your choices are and help you make a great decision?
Yeah, that becomes inevitably the question, and it can be very uncomfortable for folks to talk about.
Yeah.
Because they're like, look, I love my parents. I'm not looking forward to when they leave this earth. But at some point you have to say, well, who is going to pay the freight on these dollars?
Yep.
And what am I optimizing for? Now, I would tell you, hey, optimize for experiences, optimize for memories, optimize for these things, and don't worry too much about the tax consequences. But we've seen a number of these situations where the tax consequences for the last person left holding the bag because nothing proactive was done can be very, very, very huge. I mean, if you said, hey, I've got an income of 150 and I have to take 500 a year out. Now I am at the 37% tax bracket
for a single individual. Now, Roth IRA. So we're comparing and contrasting these two when you inherit them. That still follows the 10-year rule, right? They were sucked into that new rule when it came out in 1/1 of 2020. However, there's no required minimum distribution, and still the rules of the Roth still prevail. It's tax-free. So yes, they'd have to take out that $500,000, that $5 million, but it wouldn't be taxable to them. So you've got to optimize and look at even multiple generations. All right, let's go back, and not so much Roth conversion, so on contributions to IRA, Roth IRA. Can you do both? Could you do some pre-tax traditional IRA and some Roth? That answer is yes. Oftentimes people think, well, it's one or the other. I got to pick a lane. And many times, because of the reasons why one would make sense over the other, you do pick a lane. Sometimes it does make sense to do a little bit of both. It's not the time when you're like, I'm undecided, or I haven't talked to a CFP, therefore I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit over here and a little bit over there, and just, I'm going to make no decision and hope that's the good one. No, if you are in a tax situation where you are very close to a tax threshold that would give you more benefits, meaning you're close to a deduction phase out, where if you can get your income just a little bit lower, you won't be phased out of a certain tax deduction. So think maybe premium tax credit or American Opportunity Tax Credit, something like that.
Savers credit?
Yeah. So you want to get your income down just a little bit. Mm-hmm. It could make sense to fund just up to that amount in pre-tax to get that deduction and move your adjusted gross income, modified adjusted gross income below that line, then get that full tax benefit and have everything else contributed Roth. Mm-hmm. So my wife has been at the same employer for 20 years as well. And I feel bad for this guy. Early in her career, there was someone that was helping them with their 401k, and he came in and he actually spoke. Someone asked the question, should you contribute, or could you contribute a little bit of pre-tax, a little bit of Roth? And he said, you would never do that. That's dumb. He actually said, that is dumb. Well, she was doing it at the time. And she came home and she was like, not that I'm doubting you, Mike, but this is what this guy said. Number one, you shouldn't alienate anyone based on their financial choices, right? We're all carrying around enough baggage and emotional whatever. You want people that are speaking life into your financial decisions, not saying that's dumb. But yeah, that individual clearly did not do tax planning because we were keeping our adjusted gross income below a certain threshold to stay in a certain tax bracket, doing Roth above and beyond that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and he probably spelled dumb D-U-M. So I would just ignore him. So just think I've got a coupon. How I fund that, whether it's all traditional or all Roth or half and half or whatever percentage you want to break it down, it's your coupon. So it's either $7,500 or $8,600. And a lot of times it is confusing because people say, well, wait a minute, I can do an IRA or I can do a 401k, but I can't do both. No, that's not true. Right. You can do a 401k and you can do an IRA. You can do a 403b. You can do an IRA. Yep. So you want to be aware of what are the buckets, I don't know if pockets, whatever you want to call them, that you can fill up.
And going back to those contribution limits, $7,500 for 2026, $11,000 is the catch-up if you're age 50 or older. But you can't do that to the IRA and then also that to the Roth. They share the same contribution limit, so you've got to keep it tight.
And the only disclaimer I want to have related to this show is all of this is subject to change.
Yeah.
We did a show a little bit ago about insolvency when Social Security hits insolvency. That doesn't mean they stop paying everything. It just means if nothing changes, they'll have to pay less. Yeah. So the 10-year rule wasn't a deal before 2019.
Yeah.
And so who knows what the rules will be in the future and when you're listening to this,
But don't be paralyzed by that. Well, things could change, therefore I shouldn't do anything. No, you need to be taking a planning approach, looking at all 6 areas of your financial life, your present financial position, so your cash flow, taxes, your investment plan, your retirement plan, your estate plan, even your protection plan. All of that weighs into this decision. That's all the time we have for today. On behalf of Kevin Korhorn, myself, and all of us at KFG, have a great weekend. We'll see you next Saturday for the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group.
Securities offered through Silver Oak Securities, member FINRA/SIPC. Advisory services offered through KFG Wealth Management, LLC. Doing business as Korhorn Financial Group. KFG Wealth Management, LLC and Silver Oak Securities Incorporated companies are unaffiliated.